welcome to Viewpoint on Ukraine today. Joining me now is Alexa Chopivsky. She's the founder of Transnational Education Group, a Washington-based NGO which helps provide Ukrainian students with leadership training and education opportunities in the U.S. Welcome to Viewpoint.
Thank you for having me, Tamara.
Is Ukraine still a topic of interest for the U.S.?
Of course it is. Unfortunately, it should be a stronger topic in the U.S. It's not as strong as it was before during Euromaidan and at the beginning of the war. But we are trying to change that. Various groups, private individuals, groups such as ours, the American Center for European Ukraine, are trying to keep Ukraine and a hot topic in Washington, keep it on their radar, keep it prevalent. These folks in Congress, obviously, they're being pulled in many directions. So it's important that we, on the ground there, raise Ukraine's profile as much as possible.
What about your other organization, which you also represent? What is some of the progress points that you tell people when you meet them in Washington?
Well, we've been active on the ground in Washington, for example, organizing events to raise Ukraine's profile. We organized a two-day event earlier this year in Congress, which was centered fully around Ukraine. We had an exhibit there practicing some cultural diplomacy, a Maidan exhibit that was curated by Foma, the lead singer of Mandre. Various senators and congressmen came to the visit, spoke at the event. On day two, we had a business forum along with our partner, the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, where we brought American and Ukrainian experts in to talk about FDI, foreign direct investment.
Mm-hmm. And how do you present Ukraine and its progress in terms of the pro-EU revolution which happened last year?
Obviously, Ukraine has a lot of potential, and we are trying to get that message out.
Mm-hmm. How can the education program help Ukraine improve its standing in the world and how the U.S. sees it?
Well, I think, Ukraine is Europe. 1,000 years ago, Yaroslav Mudry, Yaroslav the Wise, made his decisive European choice by marrying off 3 of his daughters to West European rulers, including Anna of Kiev, who married King Henry I of France. Over the ensuing centuries, as you know, Ukraine was subsumed by various imperial powers. Euromaidan definitively and decisively demonstrated to the world that Ukraine is Europe. People fought and died on Maidan for European values: justice, transparency, the rule of law, a government accountable to the will of the people. How to get rid of kind of this lingering Soviet legacy? I think there are 3 important mechanisms, one of which is education, cross-cultural exchange, and cultural diplomacy. The more people-to-people contact and exchange, the better. Young people in Ukraine need greater opportunities to experience other systems and other ways of doing things, other values, to broaden their worldview, and importantly, to learn to think critically and to question authority, which is something that was prohibited during the Soviet Union. And on that note, I think that Georgia is an instructive example. When Saakashvili was president, he had this vision to reform Georgia. Mm-hmm. And it was the young people who implemented and executed these reforms. His ministers were all, 30 years old. They all spoke fluent English in addition to Georgian and Russian and probably 1 or 2 other languages. They had all studied overseas or worked overseas. Several had worked for international organizations in Tbilisi, and it showed. The results spoke for themselves. These guys were, young, modern, progressive, European. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Georgia was at the bottom of all these international indexes, the World Bank Doing Business Report, Transparency International. It was at the bottom of the post-Soviet states.
But then when Saakashvili came to power, things changed.
during Saakashvili's time, Georgia skyrocketed not only to the top of the post-Soviet states, but they were, top 12 to 20 in the world, which is an incredible jump. And we see that change happening here now in Ukraine in terms of young reformers who have studied overseas and are returning to Ukraine to work in the ministries, in parliament, mm-hmm. and they are bringing those best practices that they learned from overseas. I mean, you're not going to like everything that you learn overseas from other countries. But the point is that they bring back mm-hmm. the best of what they learned, leaving the rest.
But it's also not just the Ukrainians coming back. It's also the foreigners who are coming into the Ukrainian parliament.
And specifically, lots of Georgians who are bringing a Georgian experience with them. And it's critically important for the Ukrainian government to not only, put these people in positions in the ministries, for example, but to really embrace them and to utilize them as the real resource that they are.
And part of that, do you believe that getting rid of the Soviet legacy is part of this mission as well?
Absolutely. And I also think that values-based leadership needs to be emphasized. And by the way, this is not a Ukraine-specific concept at all. It's widely applicable and is needed everywhere. But groups like the Aspen Institute, with their Aspen Ukraine initiative, they are doing that. The recently opened Ukrainian Leadership Academy, they are doing that. We at Transnational Education Group are doing that with our Washington Business and Diplomacy Leadership Academy.
So basically helping mold young Ukrainian leaders.
Correct.
I understand a big part of that is getting Ukrainian students more involved in different education systems. But how can the Ukrainian government help improve the education system back home?
I think a critical element will be given Ukraine's European choice, the more Ukrainians can get out of their comfort zone and be exposed to other worldviews, the better. I think that the English language is critically important. I think English should be mandatory in all Ukrainian schools, by the way, as Saakashvili did in Georgia. I was delighted to witness the launch of Go Global, Ukraina Speaking, last week here in Kyiv. And it's an initiative that was started by Mustafa Nayyem. It was his idea. It was embraced by the presidential administration, Dima Shimkiv, by civil society activists. And it came to fruition. The launch was last week, as I mentioned. And they have very ambitious goals. Currently, 7% of Ukrainians speak English. By the year 2020, they want 20% of Ukrainians to be speaking English, 1 in 5 Ukrainians. They want, by the year 2020, 75% of high school graduates to be speaking 2 foreign languages. They want, by the year 2020, 100% of their government kind of Category A
that's very optimistic.
Servants to be speaking one of the official languages of Europe.
Very optimistic. Do you see that actually happening?
This is an ambitious group of folks, and I would like to believe that they will make it happen, and I think that they will. I think it's important also to involve Americans in this process, bringing native speakers over, not only to help teach English from the perspective of a native speaker, but also to act as ambassadors and transmitters for these values.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Tamara, for having me.
This has been Alexa Chopivsky. She's the founder of Transnational Education Group, a Washington-based NGO which helps provide Ukrainian students with leadership training and education opportunities in the U.S. You've been watching Viewpoint on Ukraine Today.